Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm very glad you're with us today. You know, among the big changes in our lives, all our lives, that are going to result from our coming to better understand and more widely accept the details of the greater reality, which is really most of what exists, will be a new appreciation for the powers of our minds. We now know that our brains don't generate our minds at all, but instead every human mind is an inextricable part of the fundamental consciousness that continuously manifests this universe. As such, our minds are very powerful. Jesus told us that. He said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to over there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you. That, by the way, is Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. Faith is just a belief amounting to certainty. If you're certain you can do it, as Jesus tells us, indeed, you can do it, whatever it is. We're talking about this in a series. Last week, our guest was holistic radiologist Larry Burke. He's a medical doctor who's come to use human minds as an important aspect of human healing. And next week, we're going to be talking with another practitioner who uses the powers of her clients' minds in her work with them. But this week, here for the second time, is a beautiful friend who's a prominent psychic. Laura Powers has been profiled by a lot of media, but if you see a picture of her, you understand why they all wanted to put her on video. She's been on BuzzFeed, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, Motherboard Magazine, and Vice, and that's just a few places. Laura is a clairvoyant and a psychic medium who's seen and sensed spirits since her childhood. She now uses her own developed mental powers to communicate with those in spirit and to help people to better understand and transform their own lives. This is her second visit. Today we're going to be talking with her about a topic that interests many Seek Reality listeners, and that's communicating with animals, both here and in spirit. A few years back, Google picked up a blog post I had done about pets in the afterlife, and that post by now has hundreds of comments. I still to this day get lots of emails from people who are bereaved pet parents. Some of them just had a pet die, and they're bereft. They're very, very upset. Laura Powers can communicate with beloved pets, which makes her a person who is able to help people like that, as I cannot. She's going to tell us something about that, and then we're going to ask for her thoughts on the health crisis raging in our lives in the spring of 2020. If you're listening years from now, you know how this tale comes out. We don't know yet how it comes out, and it's time for us to talk about it. Welcome, Laura. I'm so happy to have you with us again today.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you.
I've been on Laura's program, too. Laura has we'll ask you to plug it at the end, Laura. She has a wonderful actually video interview program, and I've really enjoyed being there as well. Now, some people won't have heard our prior interview, Laura, so please tell us a little bit about your history.
Sure. So I, like you said, saw ghosts and spirits since I was a girl. And growing up, I knew I was different. I could tell other people didn't see or sense what I did. And I even thought that maybe I was crazy because other people didn't pick up or sense the things that I did. So I really kept it to myself and just kind of went on living my life, analytically and tried to ignore everything as best as I could, to be honest. But as I got older into adolescence and then into adulthood, my abilities just got stronger and stronger. And for some people, it actually goes the opposite. It kind of fades out. But for me, it just kept getting stronger. I really couldn't ignore it. And then it kind of peaked at a point where I was really struggling with ghosts actually trying to take over my body.
You're kidding. No, wait a minute. No. Let's talk about that. You're a child. You're seeing things that people are telling you are not there. People or spirits, people that people say, no, that you aren't seeing that. That's not there. How did they try to take over your body? What were they doing?
Yeah, and just to clarify, I didn't tell people because I could tell they didn't see it. So I just
you
thought,
knew that. Okay.
yeah, I just thought, I remember asking my mom when I was maybe 7 years old if she saw things because I was confused, and I could tell by her response that she didn't know what I was talking about. So I was like, well, probably best just not to bring this up.
No.
So I
Oh,
didn't.
yeah.
I just was like, if I saw things, it was confusing because sometimes I would see spirits that looked very solid, like they looked like a live person until they do something that a live person can't do, like walk through a door or something, and then I would figure it out.
Oh.
But yeah, I could be a trance medium where a spirit comes in and communicates through my body. I don't want to do that. I don't like that. I like to have my body for me. So I don't allow that. But until I learned how to have boundaries, spirits would try. And there was, like, for example, one ghost in particular who was an older man who had been an alcoholic when he was alive, and he wanted to drink. And so we needed a body to do that. So he would repeatedly try to take over my body, kind of push my consciousness aside and take over. And it was, quite intense and traumatic at the time. Because
Did you know what was going on? That he was trying to get a drink?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He would tell me, he was telling me, just come on, just let me do this. I just need a drink.
My word.
Yeah. 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 And by the way, alcoholism and addiction is a very serious thing. It can continue even into, when your body has passed. And there were others, but that was the one that was he was the most insistent. And of course, now I know how to have energy boundaries that to protect. So that's not an issue. But yeah, for me, a lot of this kind of psychic stuff seems pretty scary because I didn't have teachers. I didn't have tools, and it's very different times now. I think there's so much information on the internet. You can find people like you can get teachers, but it was not like that then. And so I just was really struggling, trying to block it out, trying to ignore it sometimes, of course, keeping it all to myself because I really feared, being labeled as schizophrenic or crazy or something.
Yes. And this is, I could see that, but I think it's very important to stress this for people. One of the reasons not to be addicted to anything is that there is a lot of evidence that people who die with an addiction choose not to go to the afterlife. They choose not to follow their loved ones because they crave their drink, they crave whatever the drug is.
Yeah.
The things they can be addicted to include, believe it or not, sex. And people who say, I think I want to stay here so I can get some because nobody can see me. There are tales from astral travelers, and this is something I don't really usually talk about, of piles of naked spirits, not wearing clothing, trying to get it on. A whole giant orgy, and of course they can't. Yeah. It's not possible. So talk about frustration. That's the ultimate frustration. Not anybody. Isn't this awful? Don't be addicted to anything when you die because you will crave, you think you crave a drink now, you'll crave a drink like you cannot imagine after your death. And there is no way to satisfy that craving except to try to possess someone's body. But even then, we are told, even then you don't get the high, you don't get the things you want to get from it. So, wow. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, I'm glad you gave us a chance to say that to people. Give it up today, everybody. You'll be a lot better off. Anyway, so let's continue. So you knew you were unusual. Yeah. When did you realize this was something that maybe you wanted to do more of or might be helpful to people?
Well, I think it was kind of a process for me. So when I realized that I wasn't crazy, that it wasn't in my head, I was actually in college, and a family friend had been storing some things in my parents' garage. And my parents live in a town called Lafayette, Colorado. It's an old mining town, and it's very haunted. So there's a lot of paranormal activity there. And my family friend came. He had stored the things in the garage. He walked out, and he was like white-faced and kind of shaken up. And I asked him what was wrong, and he said, this ghost just walked up to me and was very aggressive. And then he described the ghost in detail. And it was the same ghost that I was telling you about, the one that was alcoholic. And the one that I'd been struggling with. And of course, not told anyone about it because, it just sounded crazy to me at the time. But he described this ghost in detail to me. And I hadn't said anything. I hadn't told anyone. And so for me, this confirmed, like, okay, this isn't in my head because I didn't tell him. He volunteered the information. He was clearly shaken. And this is also a guy that's like from New York, big guy, not a wimpy guy, you know. So if he was shaken, then like it really gave validity to me for what I was experiencing, because this was a very aggressive spirit, this ghost. And so that was, you know, on the one hand, it was comforting because I knew I wasn't crazy, but I still was pretty freaked out because on the other hand, then it was real. And what do I do about this? I don't know.
Yes.
So I did the only thing that I knew how to do at that time, which is to try to block it out. And I was fairly successul for several years. I, you know, basically was like, I don't see this. I don't hear this. I'm just going to ignore it and deny it and just kind of set these kind of blocks in place. And I, you know, lived my life very analytically, very logically, because I was also shutting out my intuition. And then fast forward many years, and I was just in a horrible place in my life. This kind of peaked during the recession. I, you know, had lost my job because all the budget cuts. I was in a bad marriage. I was physically ill. And I went to a psychic because I was just like, what do I do with my life? Everything's a mess, right? And she, of course, without me telling her, knew that I'd had abilities, knew that I'd blocked them out, told me I needed to open back up, honor them, acknowledge them, and then learn how to have boundaries. And so that was a turning point for me. It made sense to me. It resonated. I decided to intend, you know, open back up, and I immediately had an angelic visitation experience. And that really changed everything from there. And I started to take psychic development classes to try to learn how to manage everything. And it was through that process of taking the training that was really more to manage my life. Like I was like, I just need to learn how to manage this so my life isn't crazy, so that I don't have spirits in my room at night trying to take over, so I can sleep, so, you know, I can have some mental sanity. And then through the process of taking classes, you know, we would do practice readings, and people started to say, wow, you're really good at this. And it just became very clear after I was opening up and paying attention to my intuition and opening to my gifts, that this was a path that was really meant for me. Even though I didn't see it at the time, having a background in political science, I was not really thinking that was the case.
Well, so talk about this angelic experience you had, because we talk a little bit about angels, but it's not an area where I'm expert. So you had an angel appear to you. Can you explain how that happened and what the angel looked like?
Yeah, so this was actually, I think it was more than one angel, to be honest. And in this case, I didn't see them, although I am clairvoyant, but this experience was, it was very auditory, and I could really feel it. And the best way I could describe it was I was suddenly kind of enveloped and surrounded by what felt like angels, but I could hear them, and they sounded like wings beating, and like so many wings beating, like it was almost an overwhelming sound. And there was this kind of hum and vibration. So it was this kind of thrumming, humming, the sound of wings beating, and a lot of wings beating. And then the feeling part was the most incredible, because while I could hear that, I also felt this incredible, overwhelming love and support. And I don't know how long this experience actually lasted, but it seemed like it lasted a really long time. And when I emerged from that, and it kind of like settled down, and I was, back to just noticing the physical reality that was there, it was so life-changing for me because of the energy that I felt. First of all, it was this introduction to that realm, and I just knew they were real. And I also knew that I wasn't alone, because that was still at the time when I was feeling very much in this crisis. It was the recession had just started. I had just learned my marriage was a sham, basically. I was physically ill. I didn't have any money. Everything was in kind of chaos and disarray around me and looked pretty hopeless. But because I'd had this experience, I knew that everything was going to be okay, and I wasn't alone. And that was a life changer for me.
Wow. The thing is, most of us only have one angel working with us. That's what I've been told. That's what the dead basically tell us. We have a guardian angel who makes sure we stay physically alive and healthy while we're here until it's time to leave, at which point they'll get out of the way and let the truck hit you or whatever's going to take you at your planned exit point. But I have discovered much more recently that there is a lot more angelic activity around people who are naturally mediums.
Yes.
You've just confirmed that again. So that's pretty fascinating. Good for you.
Thank you. Yeah. I think we all have an angel that's assigned to us, but we also have access to more if we call on them and if we're working on something specific. And also, like you said, those who have a life purpose or work with this, we have more support in that area because we need it. It's like we have a big job to do. So
Many people, though, only have one guardian angel because they have other people around them who have lived in bodies before. Angels being a different higher class of beings, the servants of God. And so I know in my case, I got a bunch of guides, but I don't think I've got more than one poor long-suffering angel who has a couple of times kept me from buying the farm a lot sooner than I guess I'm supposed to. But fascinating. Okay, so did you start then to work as a medium? How did that get going?
So for me, the first thing that opened up, before I even had training was the sort of paranormal piece. So, spirits that are not in the light, earthbound spirits. And then I got training, I took clairvoyant psychic training classes. And then I also got training from a woman who helped me learn how to help ghosts cross over, which was very instrumental for me at the time so that I could clear my space and not be dealing with these, earthbound spirits all the time. And then I also got training in angelic communication and mediumship, so communicating with spirits in the light. And it was interesting because even though ever since I was little, I've been very clairvoyant, it actually was difficult for me in the beginning to learn how to access it at will and also to tune into different frequencies because the energy and frequency of like an angel is very different from a spirit in the light is very different from a ghost. So it was like learning to tune into these different frequencies. And it was definitely tough in the beginning. But I pretty quickly, learned how to do it. And then once I did, I loved it, especially mediumship I thought was so powerful. And then I just loved connecting with the angelic energies and their messages were always so helpful. So it just grew over time. And then I got training. I started working and doing it for others pretty quickly. And then the more you do it, of course, I think the more it develops. So I was also learning on the job all the time.
Yeah, you're right. This is like a muscle, which the more you use it, the more it develops. But you were working in like Hollywood or among people who were sort of famous, right? You sort of were working with celebrities and people like that?
Oh, yeah. So I worked with quite a few celebrities, most of whom I can't name because of non-disclosure agreements.
Not asking you to name them, but you sort of became an in thing with people who are famous or who are known.
I can say a couple of names. So Tori Spelling gave me permission to use her name, so I worked with her. And then my biggest kind of high-profile media thing that I've done is I was on Will Ferrell's podcast, the Ron Burgundy podcast, as a psychic. So yeah, I've enjoyed doing the media and the television and working with celebrities. And I want to say about working with celebrities, they are people just like us. They have similar issues. So I know there's a lot of like putting people on pedestal and don't get me wrong, a lot of celebrities are wonderful people, but there are people. And in terms of media, I definitely got the message to do it because it's just a wonderful teaching tool. Basically, it's a way to connect and reach more people.
Tell us how you first started to talk to animals. Were they animals that were still barking and meowing, or were they animals who had gone on ahead?
Well, I think I've always been very close with animals, loved animals, been an animal lover. And ever since I can remember, it's been a situation where I would go into someone's house or something, and let's say the cat would come up and rub and purr, and then the people would be like, "Wow, that cat hates people." Like, the cat is never even out. Like, as soon as someone comes in, the cat's hiding or whatever. Things like that have been happening ever since I can remember. And then when I started to get the training, what started to happen is people are so close with their animals, so people would ask me about their pets and either alive or on the other side. So it just started to happen just through my work that I started to do this. And then, I realized that doing animal mediumship in many ways is very similar to human mediumship. And so that I think came first. And then I started to develop my abilities to communicate with the guides, angels and spirit guides. And in some cases, I'm communicating with the animal directly. And in some cases, I'm basically receiving information from their guides and my angels and spirit guides about the animal. So depending on that animal, sometimes it's easier for me to communicate directly. Sometimes it's not possible, but I'm able to get information through the guides. And then with animal mediumship, to me, it feels very much just like I'm communicating with the human on the other side, of course, except they're an animal. So,
well, do you hear a voice? I mean, how do you get the information?
I receive thoughts. So, just like I could do mediumship with someone who's Chinese and they only spoke Mandarin when they were alive, but I don't speak Mandarin, but I'm still able to receive that intention. And so it's very similar with animal mediumship. I'm shown a lot of pictures, feelings, emotions, and through that, I'm able to relay what's happening with that spirit or being.
Talk about some of the things that animals have said to you. First let's talk about living animals. Are they aware? Let's say a cat or a dog has come up to you and is being friendly. Are they aware that you can catch the thoughts they're giving, or how do they know what you can do? They do know is what you're saying.
Some do and some don't. So I think just like with humans, there is different levels of awareness. You get some people here that are very psychic and aware that way, some that are not. I do think animals, generally speaking, are more kind of telepathically oriented than humans are. I mean, they communicate a lot in that way as a general rule. But I find with animals, sometimes they're very aware and sometimes they're just kind of like in their experience, they're happy, they don't know. But I'll have this experience a lot. Like I'm out, let's say someone's walking their dog and their dog like so wants to talk. And like the humans are like trying to take the dog away and the dog is like, no, like, wanting to hang around.
That is really fun. Yeah. So what did they say typically? Hi there. I wish they would stop giving me kibble and just buy the canned stuff. Or what do they tend to say?
I think it depends on the kind of their level, but they're like dogs, for example, as a whole are generally very friendly. The ones I've connected with, and they might communicate things with like their daily life. But a lot of times animals have a sole purpose that involves healing, helping, or teaching. So oftentimes when they're connecting with me, they also are asking me to communicate something to their human. And so that's one of the fascinating things is a lot of times it's like, it's an animal reading and like the client is inquiring, for the animal and the animal is telling me all the things that are about the human. So it's
fascinating. And for example, what revelation have you gotten from an animal?
One of the common themes is, I get this a lot with especially female clients, although it can be with male clients as well, that the animals are trying to help their humans treat themselves better, be more loving towards themselves, have better boundaries. And the thing that we need to understand with a lot of animal, what we call behavioral problems, is that they're almost always a reflection of something that's going on with their human. So if an animal is manifesting in fear, for example, there may be some kind of fear pattern that the human is manifest. I've just noticed this through my work over time that it's like if you look at the behavior that's going on with the animal, there's almost always something to say for the human. And also sometimes when they are displeased, there's a lesson, and sometimes they just don't like how they're treated. Like I had one client where this was fascinating. They were having problems with the cat, with peeing, everywhere, and their son had recently moved back in the house, teenage son, or maybe early 20s, but no, young adult. Yeah. And the family was like trying to figure out this peeing thing, and the cat was like, I don't want to live here with him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and so
did the cat say why? Was he mean to the cat?
Just didn't like his energy, just didn't want to be around him. This is a situation where the son was definitely going through some struggles in his life. Maybe you could say was feeling negative, was struggling. And the cat was just like, no, I don't want this. I don't like this. And so we asked the cat, what do you want? And the cat expressed a desire to live somewhere else. And so the cat, they found a different home for the cat. So, it's very complex. It depends on, just like humans are different, right? It depends on the animal,
right,
the situation, we often have karma with animals, just like we have karma with humans, meaning we've had different lives with them in different forms. And there is sometimes crossover with, people that have been animals and vice versa. So, generally humans are humans and animals are animals, but there is a bit of crossover is what I found as well.
That fascinates me because I've not seen that. And I would be interested in knowing more about it, because if it happens, then I want to be able to teach it. But it certainly is extremely rare if it does happen at all.
Yeah, it's not very common. And I will say that those like animals that have had human lives have more human-like personalities. They're like the dog that acts like a person,
Yeah, a lot of dogs do, actually. Not necessarily sometimes a person you want to know, but a person all the same. Let's talk about the thing that people contact me about most, which is, they love an animal, and the time comes when the animal because they don't live long. That's the horrible thing about animals.
Yeah.
Dogs especially. You just get real comfortable with the animal, and he turns 12, and suddenly he's very old. It's a sad thing about dogs, but that's the way it is. But they'll come to a point with the dog when the vet will say, okay, it's time for me to come by the house. And, he's not going to get better from this. He has cancer. He has this or that issue. Some people spend a lot of money trying to keep their animals alive. But eventually the time comes. They're not going to live beyond 16 or 17, almost no matter what happens. Yeah. So they contact me then, and they're distraught with grief. They say, will he ever forgive me? Because I took him to the vet. I allowed it to happen. Now, my experience has been, and I'm just would like your experience, my experience has been that every single animal that is contacted through a medium after their death expresses tremendous gratitude for the fact that they got taken to the vet. Has that been your experience too?
Oh, yes. I think the animals always want to alleviate any stress, pain or suffering that their human is feeling in regards to what they experienced. And yes, I just feel so much love coming from them. And again, a lot of times there's a very close soul bond between that human and the animal. And that animal is there to help and teach. And, also they're receiving something as well. But no, I have never experienced, blame. And even there was a client, and I talk about this in my book that's coming out, where a client that was asking for me to connect with her dog who had passed, and she broke up because it got very sad when we were doing this reading, because there had been a time when her husband had lost his temper and hit the dog, and then always felt bad about it afterwards. To this day felt so badly that he lost his temper, and so. We were talking with the dog who's now on the other side, and he just said, I've so forgiven him. Like, please don't, for him not to feel badly about this anymore. I think immediately there was probably forgiveness, and there was a lesson there for her husband to learn about his temper and not taking things out on others when it's an internal thing. But that dog had no ill will for, the human that had acted in that way towards him at all, and nothing but love, and wanted this, this man to forgive himself for that situation and learn what was to be learned out of it.
I agree, and because we have several friends of Seek Reality who are in fact able to communicate with pets, and they tell us this universally. They don't blame us for anything. They love us. They just love us so much, and they're grateful for the fact that we won't let them continue to suffer. That's the sad thing about Grandma. Grandma may wish that she could go the way of the dog. Then she's free of this awful body. But people don't have that option. Animals do, and they want us. They want us to relieve them of that suffering and free them.
Yeah, and I'd love to add that animals, as a general rule, don't have that fear of death or passing on in the way that we do. And so part of what happens is, we tend as humans to hold on as long as possible because consciously or unconsciously there's this fear of the unknown, of death. And I have found that animals just don't have that. I mean, they want to stay alive. They definitely have the will to live. But when it's their time, I feel like generally they pass pretty easily. And there are animal ghosts ghosts. That's something that's not really talked about very much, but they are much less common than a human ghost, I think, for that reason.
Yes.
And typically when there's an animal ghost, I found that it's usually because there's been some kind of trauma or something, and they just maybe had a hard time processing what happened.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. It's possible too, everyone, for your dog or cat to come and visit after their death, and usually they're not in a body. I've heard of cases where clearly they were, but they're not. But for example, if your cat has always slept on your bed by your feet, people have seen the little paw indentations appear in the blanket heading for the spot, and then the little round spot where the animal falls down against your leg to sleep there. People tell me that happens in the period after an animal dies, and it's the most comforting thing because they know he or she is fine. Or if you have another animal, suddenly that animal is looking at a spot where there's nothing. That the animal's probably looking at a spot where he or she can see the deceased pet, the old friend.
Oh,
all
they
very
do.
beautiful.
Yeah, they visit all the time, just as spirits, human spirits do as well.
Yes.
And that sense of separation is really more from us unless we're very in tune and able to feel or sense that ourselves.
Every animal you've ever loved is waiting for you there. And they're young, healthy, happy. They look great. They feel great. And there's no time where they are now. So therefore, it doesn't seem as if it takes any time at all for you to arrive. Even if you haven't seen that animal since you took it to the vet when you were 12 years old and now you're 92, to the animal it will seem, we're told, as if you had, the animal just turns and there you are coming right after. Yes. Which to me is a beautiful thought that the animal doesn't have to even wait for you. They're there.
Absolutely. And also that time is more from our perspective versus over there. So
yes, that's absolutely right. That's right. So what do you want people to know about communication? You've been doing this for a long time and helping a lot of people really to ease their grief or to get better understanding. And you don't do it just for grief, right? You also help people to get messages that help them to improve their lives.
Absolutely. So with live animals, I'm obviously helping with, situations with the animals themselves. Again, a lot of times the animals are communicating things for their humans. And then with mediumship, yes, if you've lost a pet or an animal that you're close with, you can always get comfort and see how they're doing and check in. But it's also, I think, just a fun way to communicate. And because so often animals do, in a way, act like teachers for us, that even when they cross over, they might still continue to give loving and supportive messages to help guide that person. So I have found that a lot of times, even though it's mediumship, animal mediumship, it ends up being also a reading about what can help that human, because they do pop in and visit and see what's going on with the people that they knew when they were alive here as animals, and then want to continue to help those people on their path to have a better life.
Is this something that most people can benefit from? Do you caution that not every animal is going to communicate? Or what do you say to people who contact you about trying to communicate with a pet maybe that's just gone on ahead?
Gosh, I think it can be really helpful to understand what's going on with that animal. What is the situation? Is there alignment? Is there something that can be done to help the animal? Is the animal in distress? Are they trying to communicate something that's going on with the human? Like, there's so many things that we can learn. And also, I just want to share that a lot of animals in particular are quite clairvoyant and telepathic. So this is something I've gotten, especially dogs. Let's say you're having a behavioral issue, you're trying to get a dog to do something or not do something. Communicating, like showing mental pictures to the dog, will often work, or telepathic messages. Not all of them, but I found that as a general rule, a lot of dogs really respond to that. So if you want them to go get the ball, show an image of them getting the ball or something like that.
Really? How interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just picture it in your mind's eye.
So we have to be careful what we're thinking around the dog, because they can read our minds to some extent, maybe?
Yeah, I think they can read intentions, and also there's whatever we're putting out there. And then there's also, when we're focusing on it specifically, sends a very more specific, loud and clear message. And I believe that this is the case for humans too, that we can practice and hone in on these abilities. It's just that with animals, where, they're usually not communicating with us verbally very much. I mean, there's some dogs that know a certain number of words, for example, but it's definitely not their main way of communicating with each other. I mean, you see this all the time, animals reacting to each other and like doing things. Like I saw a Facebook post the other day of like a dog that went out and was missing for several days and came home with another dog and a sheep, or it was a goat, came home, these two other animals. And you're like, there's definitely some communication going on there. Like,
absolutely. Hey guys, I got to go home, and I'd like some friends there. Oh, that's really great. Let's talk about this spring, because even for people who are quite old, what has happened in the world is unprecedented in our lifetimes. That basically the world got shut down. Now this isn't our first. Every few years we seem to get a virus, but this is the first one where it would shut down the world. What do you feel about all of this?
Yeah, I feel like this is complex because this is coming in for different reasons for different people. And I've gotten a couple of psychic things in regards to coronavirus and what it's doing. So the one thing, and you already talked about, people crossing over. I've been shown that there are some people who it's their time to go. And I think it is really interesting to see that many of the people that are crossing right now from coronavirus have one or more chronic health issues, or they're of an advanced stage. And so that's what I was shown, is that this is just in a way helping, if we can look at it that way. Those who it's their time to go, like you said, animals, they express gratitude when they're not in suffering and they can be, move on. And so for those who it's their time, this is what it's doing. And then for many others, one of the things that coronavirus is doing is helping to people to clear their fear. And coronavirus is bringing up so much fear for people for many different reasons, whether it's literally for their health and safety, whether it's for, finances. It's bringing up fear. And one of the ways that we actually release fear is to face the fear, like face what we're afraid of. And so for most people, they will get through this coronavirus situation and they will be fine, and they will have faced their fear and walked through it. And then there are also many other things that are happening, people being realigned. So jobs, sectors, industries that are going away, others that will be born. And by the way, I have so much compassion for people that are going through this. And in my case, a lot of this realignment happened during the recession. Because as I mentioned, I was unemployed, physically ill, in a bad marriage, no money, career down the tubes. Yeah, that's right. And it felt horrible, but everything that was taken away was something that was not in my highest alignment, and that made space for something that was. So I think that's happening for a lot of people as well.
That's a wonderful point, and I think the same thing is true. One of the blessings of this is that it knocks us out of our sort of safety zone, out of our predictable path, and it makes us start to think about other things. To me, it's almost a positive thing for many people, not for everyone. For some people, this is a horrendous time, but even in that, there can be blessings. There can be good things that come of it. Because a lot of industries are dying and being born around us now, and things are sort of happening much more quickly than they did 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I guess we just all really hope that for everyone listening, there will be a ray of light coming from whatever seems to be not working, and that they'll. I mean, I started walking for the first time in my life. That to me is huge. I didn't realize I would enjoy it, and I do. I never would have done that if it hadn't been for this. And I think a lot of people are finding that kind of little good thing. But do you have any sense about any predictions about this and how long it will last and what's going to happen, or is this not an area you've been looking at?
Well, I have been given bits and pieces, and of course, I think we need to also keep in mind that everyone has free will, and there's choices being made all the time that impact how this plays out and the timeline. But what I've been shown is that by June, things will start to open up in some places, maybe not in others. It's definitely it's one of these things that it's not all happening at the same time, the same place, because of just how it's working. And so some places there'll be some relief in June. Some places it may continue to get worse. And basically for us to trust the process, but I'm also getting for people not to be in a lot of fear about it. Yes, it's definitely a real virus. There's some conspiracy theorists and things that this is fake or whatever. No, it's definitely real.
It's real.
It's happening. But at the same time, to look at it on the deeper spiritual and energetic levels, understand what's happening, and that if something is being taken away from us, there's usually a higher purpose to it. And so that's okay to mourn, to feel grief, to feel sad, but also to know that there is a silver lining, there is a positive reason, and it's for us to, learn and see what that is. And that sometimes can only happen over time. So allow yourself to grieve or mourn, and be aware, but I'm also getting for us not to be operating from fear about this all the time, and also release judgment, because one of the biggest things I see people is people judging each other all over the place. Through this. Like, oh, you're wearing a mask. You're not wearing a mask. How dare you? You should be punished. That kind of thing. And I just think, God and the universe deals with karma and our lessons. We don't need to wear that hat. That's not our role.
No, that's right. Our job is to love one another most of all. But look at your own life. I mean, if you hadn't gone through all the negative things you went through during the Great Recession, you wouldn't have the beautiful life that you have now and the ability to help so many people. So that turned out to be a wonderful gift to you, even though at the time didn't feel like one. Not all gifts are fun to receive. But that doesn't mean that they're not gifts.
Yeah, when I was going through that, it was probably the most traumatic thing I've experienced in my life, to be honest. And that said, I've had spirits try to take over my body. So that says a lot.
That's a negative. By the way, did you ever help that guy to transition home?
Yes.
You did. Yeah, you helped the drunk go home.
I did.
Oh, my word.
I had to hire a woman to train me to learn how to do it. And he was very stubborn. A ghost is, they still have their free will, their choice. And so, we set up some boundaries and said, you don't have the right to be in this house anymore. You can move on or not. We can help you if you want, but you can't be here. It involved a long conversation with him basically, and trying to help him understand, the light and how things work. And we were able to get him across, and it was a huge relief because, and by the way, there were other people that lived in that same place, other women that had the similar issues. Like he would stand at the foot of the bed and watch you sleep, watch you shower, Yeah. So it did take some work. But yeah, we got him to cross, and it was a huge relief for me.
It was probably a relief for him too, but my goodness. Well, I'm glad that's a little piece that I would have wondered about if we hadn't mentioned it. Talk about how people can reach you. I mean, your website is healingpowerswithans.net, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's my work for my psychic work. I also do a lot of creative work. If you're curious about that, it's laurapowers.net. That's where my, modeling, acting, and, other stuff is. But laurapowers.net is on the psychic side. And then I'm fairly active on social media, Healing Powers on Facebook, and on Instagram, it's Laura Powers 44. I'd love to hear from people. And then I have 7 books on the supernatural, angels, manifesting, archangels, and those are all available on my website and then also at Amazon.
What's the next one about?
It's on my work with animals. So it's on animal mediumship and animal communication. And I break down the chapters into different things to understand about animals, how they operate, why they're here, how to work with them. And then I also included transcripts of many different readings. So like the one story I told about that client with her husband who was, blamed himself. So I have many different readings, and I think it's very interesting to hear because in that I say what I'm saying and then whatever the animal is communicating with me. So it's broken down by whatever my client is saying, what they're asking, and then what the animal is responding through me.
So when that book comes out, we'll have you back to talk about in more detail, even talk about animal communication. That's going to be fun. Yeah. Okay.
I can get you a copy of the book so you can read it before, and then we can talk about it.
I'm so sorry we've come to the end of our time. It always goes so quickly when you and I are visiting. But we'll do this again soon. And everyone, reach out to Laura if it interests you that the kinds of things she's able to do, because she has a very good track record in helping people. And I know you love to help people, which to me is the best part of it. So thank you, Laura. Consider yourself hugged, my dear.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Always lovely to connect with you.
This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm really glad you could be with us today. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began and you never will end. And it's when you really grasp the meaning of that, it's going to change everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest will be psychic and medical intuitive Julie Ryan. Julie has psychic abilities that range all over the place: healing, spirit communication. She accesses people's past lives. She removes ghosts from buildings. I don't know if they're drunk ghosts, so that's the kind of thing I'm going to ask her. We're going to talk to her next week about her book called Angelic Attendants. I really need to learn more about angels. And what the book is called Angelic Attendants, What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next. I know a lot about this subject, but I know it primarily just from the viewpoint of the people who have transitioned and sometimes the people who have been at the bedside. To hear about someone who has basically made a study of the process, it's very illuminating. I think you'll enjoy hearing what she has to tell us next week. This week, of course, our wonderful guest has been Laura Powers, here for the second time. Laura is a very prominent psychic to the stars, clairvoyant and psychic medium. As you can see, she has all kinds of talents I didn't even know she had. We'll talk about those next time as well. She's been seeing spirits all her life. Some people never really get into what it can mean and how they can use this talent, but she has done that very well. And this week we've been talking about communicating with pets, but there's so many more things we can talk about that I think you will love hearing about. This is the world that is unseen is every bit as interesting, complex, much bigger than the world that we see. So the more we can talk with people who have the ability to embrace that world and share it with us, I think the richer your life is going to be. So I'm looking forward very much to my pet was a horse. I've talked about him before, and I cannot wait to hug him again. That's going to be even as much fun as seeing my family again, I must say. So all of these things, all of these possibilities are there for all of us, and people like Laura Powers are able to help us to make the most of these realities right now. As you know, my own nonfiction books are liberating. I don't have as many as Laura does, but Liberating Jesus, My Thomas, The Fun of Dying, The Fun of Staying in Touch, The Fun of Growing Forever, The Fun of Living Together, and soon The Fun of Loving Jesus, Embracing the Christianity that Jesus taught. There are children's picture books, too. The adult books are all available as audiobooks as well, and you can get them through bookstores or, of course, always on Amazon.com. If you want to contact me for any reason at all, just go to the green contact block on robertagrimes.com and it sends me an email. I answer every email. It can take days sometimes because I get so many, but it's very important to me to hear from you if you have a question I can answer or some way that I can help you. Just reach out and contact me. Past episodes of Seek Reality are on webtalkradio.net, realrevolutionradio.com, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and the wonderful Dream Vision 7 radio family plays them about a year later, which is wonderful because it gives people another chance. And a lot of people wait and hear them a year later, which I think is really fun. You also can get an app in the iTunes App Store. It's free, and people tell me that the podcasts just download automatically when they're posted. So there's that you can do as well. If you enjoy our weekly conversations, you might want to come on Sundays and share my blog post of the week. I've been talking about Easter and the shroud and why Jesus actually came and how we know that he really did rise from the dead. All those things, those are recent posts there. And again, if you want to, you can comment, or you can just send me an email and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with that. I'm happy to have you tell me you disagree. I enjoy helping people come to better understand. So meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy, please make the most of this coming week in our One Reality, always knowing that you are a powerful, eternal being, and you, most of all, in the entire universe, you are infinitely loved.
You've been listening to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Join us every week as we explore what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about the one reality we all share. Knowing the truth changes everything.